Yassas. Welcome to Greek Like Me, the podcast about all things Greek. I'm your host, Pamela Deodes Wood. Email us at stealthgreek@gmail.com to share comments, questions, and stories about anything and everything Greek. Kalimera sas pedia. I have no voice. We've got some serious lunacy going on in the US, and it's demoralizing. So we decided to find escape in a deliciously charming, malevolently villainous, lollipop-wielding, super cool pop culture icon. We're going full Telly Savalas in this episode. Who loves you, baby? Today is the anniversary of Telly Savalas' passing on January 22nd, 1994. So consider this a tribute. Memory eternal. Savalas was a Greek's Greek. His pride and love for his heritage oozed out of every pore. He fell into acting accidentally in his late 30s and never looked back. He was the consummate character actor in critically acclaimed movies in the 1960s and 70s, earning a Best Supporting Actor nomination for the Academy Award. He was a huge TV star in the 1970s. He made music albums, owned a racehorse, and had 6 children with 4 different women. He was a storyteller and a gambler. It was a wild ride. He called it a merry-go-round and was happy to stay until it was time to get off. He didn't have any illusions about fame, saying actors should be ready for when the applause stops. There's one available biography of Savalas, long considered questionable, so I passed. Instead, relying on articles, a few books on acting and television, and TV interviews with Savalas where his outsized personality still shines. We had a Telly Savalas movie marathon, perfect for a snowy January in New Jersey. I'd seen The Dirty Dozen when I was way too young. And The Greatest Story Ever Told, which wasn't so great, except for Savalas. So we watched movies we hadn't seen before. Birdman of Alcatraz, The Young Savages, Kelly's Heroes, The Marcus Nelson Murders. And we're not done, because Telly Savalas is just what we needed right now. As a Greek American of a certain age, I cannot begin to explain to younger generations the impact Savalas had on the Greek American psyche in the 60s and 70s. The only Greeks I saw on TV as a kid were actors playing Italians, Jews, Native Americans, and Mexicans. We recently watched an ancient episode of Bonanza on YouTube with a shady Mexican character that I immediately pegged as Greek, Arthur Bathanidis as Pablo. It was a game we played as kids, Spot the Greek. The rare Greek character on TV was usually a diner owner yelling and throwing plates during his 60 seconds of airtime. Zorba the Greek and Malina Makuri had huge impacts on the general public in the 60s, and Greeks everywhere busted their buttons. Telly Savalas was a continuing presence in films, and during his 5-year run as TV's Detective Lieutenant Theo Kojak, Greek-American detective with a Polish-sounding name, he owned the airways. One night each week, time stopped when my mother turned on the TV and tuned into Kojak. Everyone katiste kala, so she could watch her favorite TV detective. Like all of the diaspora, she reveled in the Greek ad-libs between Savalas and his brother George, who was a supporting actor on the show, especially when the ad-libs were salty. My proper and too serious mother would howl at the in-jokes only the Greeks in the audience could pick up, while covering our ears. We didn't know what they were saying anyway. My mother didn't allow that kind of talk in our house, English or Greek. Aristotelis Savalas, Telly, was the son of Greek immigrants, Christina Kapsalis of Sparti and Nikolaos Savalas of Laconia. Nick was one of 20-odd children of Kostas the painter, as he was known in the Chorion. He started a family in his 50s, Kostas did. When asked about his grandfather in interviews, Telly always deflected the question artfully. So Nick went to America, met Christina, who is an artist in New York. Christina's art can be found online. She was influenced by Picasso, and some of her paintings are pretty striking. Nick and Christina married and eventually had 5 children: Gus, Telly, George, Teddy, and Katerina, or Konstantelis, Aristoteles, Yorgos, Theodoros, και Katerina. Telly was born on January 21st, 1922, in Garden City, Long Island, where the family lived for many years. Savalas described his father, Nick, a sometimes restaurateur, as Mr. Razzle Dazzle, a millionaire a couple of times, a pauper 3 times. At one time, Nick owned multiple restaurants, and the family lived in large houses in wealthy neighborhoods and sent the children to private schools. Next thing, Savalas said, the kids were pulled out of school and tossed into the back of a truck while Nick sold Christina's homemade cookies on the streets of New York City. Nick was always playing the angles, at one time selling tickets to enter a local beach that was free to the public. But he raised his children to love their heritage. Savalas said, "Our father raised us with great pride in being Greek, to never lose our Greek language, to never lose our religion." The Savalas family, like many, fell on hard times during the Great Depression and moved into a small, shabby apartment above Nick's last remaining restaurant, where Christina hid from the gas man, banging at the door for payment, while little Telly insisted no one was home but him. He called times like this his acting in real life, his drama school. Savalas never went to a legitimate drama school. He didn't believe in them. The way he saw it, everyone was a performer, even little babies wanting attention. On Britain's Today show, he said he loved acting because it was, quote, nice to be compensated for things you've done all your life. My background as an actor is just life itself. The traumas, the hardships, the pleasant experiences. When the time came to make believe for money, I just kept doing things that I was doing for real free. Some people in the neighborhood called Telly a dirty Greek. Not unusual for the times, when Greeks were considered neither white nor entirely human. Baba Nick's response, according to Telly, was, "When you grow up and realize how important heritage is, then they will need permission to speak to you." Older brother Gus said Nick had a strap hanging in the kitchen next to a sign that said, "Whoever speaks English in this house gets this." Their father would say, "If you want to speak to a Frenchman, speak French. If you want to speak to an Englishman, speak English. But if you want to talk to God, speak to him in Greek." Telly said he was absolutely right. "I am a proud Greek. I carry my Hellenism like a badge." Telly and Gus brought in money selling newspapers and shining shoes. And according to Telly, he occasionally shoplifted. He told a story of wandering around Macy's one winter day and spotting a flexible flyer, a kid's sled for the snow. He shoved it under his coat, so he wasn't a very good shoplifter. And on his way out, a security guard asked him what he had under there. Telly answered it was his present from Santa Claus and walked out. The next day, the man showed up at the apartment informing Telly's parents the boy wasn't allowed in the store unsupervised. Telly never knew why the man didn't tell on him. The streets and beaches of Long Island were young Telly's playground. He swam like a fish, like the tritones, sea gods or demons serving the god Poseidon, with the torso of a man and the tail of a fish. At 13, he was the youngest lifeguard ever hired at Jones Beach. One night as the beach was closing, he wanted to show off for a group of girls by diving into the sea and swimming out as far as he could, until suddenly it was dark and he became disoriented. Unable to see the shore, he followed lights, floating and swimming for hours, until in the early afternoon of the next day, he finally climbed back onto land in New Jersey, some 50 miles downstream. Sandy Hook, maybe? He claimed the tide carried me. His mother thought he drowned. Another experience from his days as a lifeguard haunted Savalas all of his life. He pulled a man from the water one day too late. The man's 2 small children stood near his body, wailing. It tore him apart. Savalas forever felt responsible. And this lifelong trauma pushed him to ensure that every one of his 6 children learned to swim and were taught whatever skills necessary to protect them in the water. Swimming continued to be his favorite form of exercise throughout his life because he just liked to swim. If it kept him fit, all the better. He was asked in an interview for Stars in Sports if he worked out. His answer? About 40 years ago, I took a long walk. Vintage Telly. He was 19 when the U.S. joined the war in 1941. He enlisted in the medical corps. He had an idea of becoming a doctor like an uncle who practiced in the city. He received medical training at Camp Pickett in Virginia and soon became Corporal Savalas. But his military service ended in 1943 following a terrible car accident that left him badly injured with a broken pelvis, a concussion, and other injuries. It took him a year to recover. Most of his military service records were destroyed in a raging fire at the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis, Missouri in 1973. The NPRC is the central repository of personnel-related records for the United States military. In that fire, 16 to 18 million records were destroyed. An unprecedented disaster. 80% of the records were of Army personnel discharged between November 1912 and January 1960. We know Savalas was awarded the Purple Heart. This is reported over and over. But why is a mystery. No one seems to know where he served, and he refused to talk about it, even with family members. Not unusual for returning war veterans who've been through trauma. After his discharge, he entered Columbia University, probably on the GI Bill, and studied psychology because he said human behavior always fascinated him. He thought he might become a psychiatrist. He may have also taken classes in radio production at this time. In 1945, while still in college, he met future wife Katerina Nikolaidis at a Greek dance. This is part of the culture. Greek Americans met and partied at Greek dances held in churches or Greek-owned halls. I have photos of my parents, aunts, and uncles decked out at Greek dances, young Greeks on the prowl for romance or potential life partners. Katerina was 17. Telly was 23. Within 2 years, they were married. While on their honeymoon, Telly's beloved father, Nick, died of bladder cancer. A bad omen. Katerina supported the couple while Telly was in school, working odd jobs, and stepping out with other women. He listed his occupations then as truck driver, restaurant worker, and English teacher. He earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and planned to apply for medical school. There was a daughter, Christina, named for Telly's mother. In the early 1950s, Telly was hired as a writer for the U.S. Information Services, a section of the State Department. In 1952, he hosted a popular radio show called Telly's Coffee House for the State Department's Voice of America. Voice of America has provided news and other programs in 48 languages broadcast throughout the world since 1942. The current administration tried to shut it down, but it's still there. Savalas interviewed famous people from Frank Sinatra to Eleanor Roosevelt, Marilyn Monroe. The show won a Peabody Award and is listed in the National Archives catalog, but it's not currently accessible online, so we're posting a link in the episode notes to the December 30th, 1952 program available on the University of Georgia website. Savalas interviews opera great Marian Anderson. He sounds smooth, confident, charismatic, the perfect voice for radio. In 1955, Savalas moved over to ABC TV, where he worked as executive director of news and special events broadcasts. It's rumored he gave famed sportscaster Howard Cosell his first TV job. I saw this in several places, but I could not confirm it. The same year he started at ABC, Savalas had the strangest experience of his life. He swore it to be true despite previously rejecting all things paranormal. And honestly, every Greek has a story. He told this one many times, including on an episode of the 1990s Australian program, The Extraordinary, linked in our episode notes. He's got the year wrong. He says 58 or 59, but all the information lines up with 1955. He tells the host, "Something happened in my life that scared the hell out of me. Something I can't understand to this day." He just dropped off a date and was heading home to Long Island. Yeah, he was married at the time. Telly was adored by women, and he adored them right back. Around 2:30 in the morning, his car ran out of gas. He was walking to an all-night gas station near the Cross Island Parkway when he heard a strange, high-pitched voice offering him a ride. He turned to see a Cadillac that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. The man behind the wheel was dressed in a white suit. Telly hesitated, but it was the middle of the night, so he got in. He realized he didn't have any money, but before he said anything, the man offered to pay for the gas. Telly had him write down his name and phone number so he could pay him back. As they returned to Telly's car, the man said he knew Harry Aganis, the Red Sox baseball player. Telly didn't know who Aganis was and shrugged it off. The strange man helped him start his car, and Telly headed home. The next day, a newspaper headline announced the sudden death of Red Sox baseball player Harry Aganis from a pulmonary embolism. That was strange enough. But when Telly called the number he'd been given by his Good Samaritan, the woman answering told him her husband had been dead for 3 years. Telly persuaded the woman to meet with him. The handwriting on the note the man had given to Telly matched the husband's. He'd driven a Cadillac, and he had been buried in the white suit that Telly described. The only thing that didn't add up was the high-pitched voice. The wife insisted his voice had been quite deep. Then she mentioned her husband had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the neck that destroyed his vocal cords. We told this story in our episode The Golden Greek, Harry Aganis, from June 2023. It's in Aganis' biography. Harry Aganis died in June 1955. Somewhere around this time, Telly decided to become a theatrical producer. He produced plays in Connecticut and immediately began losing money. So he had an affair with an actress. Caterina divorced him in 1957. I guess she'd had enough, and he was back living with his mother. He switched to directing plays at the Garden City Theater, where women flocked to him, including a theater teacher named Marilyn, who would become his second wife 3 years later. How he had time to work in an executive position at ABC, see his daughter, carry on affairs, direct plays, I do not know. I wish I had that energy. By this time, he'd given up his plans to become a psychiatrist. In a 1977 interview with Joe Arbell on WTVJ-TV in Miami, Savalas said that Freud was a genius, an intellectual, but his findings were intellectual speculation. I resent the fact that they made a so-called science out of it and called it psychology. The genius of Freud died with him, and what followed was criminal. He was still fascinated by people and what motivated them, and this may have been key to what came next. Telly was known to have connections to many actors, including foreign actors, through his work in radio and at the TV station. One day in 1959, he was contacted at ABC by a casting agent. The TV program Armstrong's Circle Theater, a well-respected anthology series, needed an actor with a foreign accent. Telly knew just the man, but was unable to reach him. Not wanting to put the casting agent on the spot, he went to the audition himself, pretending he barely spoke English and was given the small part. He went home to think about it before accepting, asking his mother for her opinion. Savalas said Christina told him he'd be a glorious actor. It was his first professional acting job at the age of 37. The director was so impressed with him, especially after he found out the accent was a put-on. He asked Telly to star in an upcoming teleplay. Telly agreed. It describes his excitement, memorizing the script, dealing with wardrobe, until moments before the live broadcast was about to begin, when he panicked and forgot everything. So he told himself it was only a job. He'd make a little money. He decided to enjoy it. The lines came back to him, the program went off without a hitch, and he was on his way. Prominent actors and directors took notice. Telly began appearing regularly on popular television shows like Naked City, The Untouchables, Combat, The Fugitive, and The Twilight Zone. Apparently, he was also going back to teaching for the steady income. He had a recurring role on 77 Sunset Strip and was a regular on a short-lived series called Acapulco, and later played Al Capone in another failed series in 1960. Telly Savalas as Al Capone. He made his first appearance in a film in 1961 with a small role in Mad Dog Call, a gangster movie. By now, he was married to Marilyn Gardner. They had a daughter with another on the way. Burt Lancaster had seen a few of his TV performances and wanted Savalas for his latest project, The Young Savages. Telly played a police lieutenant in what the New York Times called his first important role. Director John Frankenheimer told Biography he didn't want to hire a schoolteacher until he met him and cast him immediately. Savalas made a standout impression as a tough New York City cop. In Savalas' obituary in The Independent, David Shipman said he was the best thing in the film. Lancaster topped Savalas again for his next film, Birdman of Alcatraz. And I can say without hesitation, Savalas was the best thing in that film as the off-kilter con Vito Gomez. And the Academy backs me up. Savalas was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Telly's brother Gus was working for the U.S. Foreign Service at the U.S. Embassy in London when he heard from Telly about the nomination, and he didn't believe him. Telly was a joker, a gifted storyteller, so Gus assumed it was a prank until he read about it in the papers. This was Savalas' third or fourth role in a movie, and he was nominated for an Oscar in the company of Omar Sharif, Ed Begley, and Terrence Stamp. I might think he was pulling my leg too. He didn't win it. Veteran actor Ed Begley took home the Oscar, but Savalas had made an impression, and from then on, he was one of the busiest character actors in Hollywood, and every role was memorable. After Birdman, he played a detective again in Cape Fear, starring Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum. Shipman commented, the three films established Savalas as the sort of actor who could make mincemeat out of the likes of Lancaster and Peck. And he was right. His first comedy in 1963 was The Man from the Diners Club, starring Danny Kaye, playing a mobster named Foots Pallardos. I haven't seen this one, but I'm going to rent it because I need to see Telly Savalas playing against Danny Kaye. Foots Pallardos. Shipman called Savalas one of the best screen heavies of all time, and he played menacing very, very well. In the lackluster Beau Jest as the vicious sergeant major, in The Dirty Dozen as a psychotic killer, and The Scalp Hunters where his character is just plain evil. But his screen presence in every film, he was remarkable in his way. Part of it was natural charisma and a strong personality. Part of it was his approach to each role. The New York Times quoted him saying, even the crazies I've played, I've always tried to give them some dimension to their insanity. You can almost see his mind working as you're watching him. He didn't regret playing the bad guy. Playing villains was fine, but he refused to paint evil people in what he called a glorious light. He said, I don't like violence of any kind, so I never play anything dealing with violence in an attractive way. Later, discussing his TV show, he said, you rarely see Kojak pull a gun. He abhors violence. He stated more than once he didn't like heroes on either side, good guys or bad guys, especially if they used violence. He would not have been a fan of the Avengers. In 1965, he appeared in Genghis Khan. Some critics hated his performance, others saw him as one of the few positive notes. White guys in makeup playing Asian guys, always sketchy. The same year, he was nominated for a Golden Globe for his portrayal of an Army sergeant in the Battle of the Bulge. The characters he played rose above box office failures. Shipman writes he was certainly one of the few whose reputation was unscathed by The Greatest Story Ever Told, which was a mess of a movie. Before the mess was screened, it was highly anticipated. When Savalas told his mother he was going to appear in it, she excitedly told her son that he would be a wonderful Jesus. When he told her he was playing Pontius Pilate, the man sentencing Jesus to death, he said she paused, then said to him, "Well, make the character sympathetic." But out of that mess of a movie came Savalas' signature look. The film's director, George Stevens, persuaded Savalas to completely shave his already balding head. It was a rare look at the time. Yul Brynner is the only other white actor I can think of who pulled it off. On Savalas, it became sexy. Casey Chalk, in an essay in Law and Liberty, claims sometime in the 1960s, after the shaven head, Savalas was voted third sexiest man on screen. This cropped up repeatedly during research. I could not find the poll. My retired research librarian husband could not find the poll. But even without verification, I could believe it. He was documented, a documented sex symbol in the 1970s. There was just something about him. And over, entertainment media tried to get Savalas to explain his appeal. He told John Tesh in 1991, "What you see on the screen is a bald-headed guy making a living. You turn him into a sex symbol, that's not my fault." Savalas actually considered himself the sensitive romantic type. He told interviewers, "Don't paint me as a tiger. I'm a pussycat." When Joe Arbell asked him what he thought of himself, Savalas said, "I'm cute." He referred to himself as Romeo in the body of a gorilla. He pointed out he'd had roles showing a compassionate side, but only his villains were remembered, like when I played the nut in Dirty Dozen. But no matter what part he played or how unconventional his looks, he always had our attention. Yet he was humble. His second wife, Marilyn, said he told her, "Someday they're going to find me out and send me home." He credited his success to his ordinariness. The fact that people all over the world can identify with me and say, "Telly Savalas, you gorilla. You're just like I am and you made it." And he enjoyed the trappings while he could. Marilyn told interviewers he'd leave the set of The Greatest Story Ever Told, still in costume, something normally not allowed by the studios, and drive home, take the elevator up to their apartment, and lounge around making phone calls and smoking, all while dressed as Pontius Pilate. He traveled first class ship, first class train. He had a terrible fear of flying that became an impediment to his career at times. He lost out on the title role in 1967's Cool Hand Luke because his ship returning from Europe ran late and he wouldn't make the soundstage in time for filming. A groundbreaking movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Groundbreaking movie that wound up starring Paul Newman. What a different movie it would have been with Telly Savalas. While Savalas appeared in movie after movie, always impressing the critics, he managed to remain the center of his family's universe. He loved them so much and was so loved by them, they naturally stayed on good terms with each other. On Biography, his daughter Penelope from Savalas' second marriage explains every time she and her sister visited New York City, they stayed with Telly's first wife, Katerina, and her daughter Christina, because they were family. In the late 60s, Savalas acted in a few more comedies, Buenos Aires, Mrs. Campbell in the U.S., and two in his beloved Britain, The Assassination Bureau and Crooks and Coronets. In 1969, again in Britain, he was the first American actor to play a Bond villain on Her Majesty's Secret Service. On set, he met 19-year-old Sally Sheridan, who had a minor role in the film, and they became lovers. Savalas was 47. Savalas juggled family and lover for 5 years until Sheridan became pregnant with his son and demanded he choose. He divorced Marilyn in 1974 and moved in with Sheridan. But let's rewind back to those 5 years still juggling his private life. Savalas continued appearing in movies and continued to dominate as a supporting actor. In 1970, he completely overshadowed Hollywood He-Man Clint Eastwood in Kelly's Heroes. It's an over-the-top comical war heist movie, a lot of fun, a very 70s kind of movie. It was a big hit. He was stellar. But soon, Savalas became careless in choosing his movie roles. Instead of picking quality scripts, he accepted work based on the paycheck. Well, he now had 4 children, 1 wife, 1 lover, 1 ex, and his mother to support. I could understand that. Or he chose movies based on location, opportunities for gambling, or to do favors for friends. He wound up in a few spaghetti westerns and other forgettable films, even foregoing the chance to play General George Patton in the classic movie. Patton. He would have been an incredible Patton, but he turned it down to do a favor for a friend. In the biography episode on Savalas, Sally Sheridan quotes one critic's review. George C. Scott did a wonderful job doing an amazing impression of Telly Savalas playing Patton. Enough said. I didn't find any interviews where he expressed regrets. Acting was a fun job. He made a lot of money. In 1971, Savalas claimed he'd made $1 million and spent $1 million. He said, "It was a good year because I didn't owe a buck either." He debuted his first album, This Is Telly Savalas, in 1972. Savalas had an incredible speaking voice, but he was no singer. In 1974, he did a spoken word cover of Bread's hit If, and it made the UK charts. I have not heard it, but I've never recovered from William Shatner's spoken word version of Rocket Man, so I hesitate to go there. In 1981, Savalas hit #1 in the UK charts with a cover of the Don Williams country song, Some Broken Hearts Will Never Mend. I love the Brits, and I love that the Brits love Telly, because he loved them right back. Over the years, he released 5 albums, 14 singles, and wrote a couple of original songs, including Look Around You with John Savalas in 1972 and Goodbye Madam with Christian Brunn and Günther Beryl in 1982. You can find Telly singing them on YouTube. Don Rickles, a friend and co-star in Kelly's Heroes, said, "Pavarotti doesn't have a thread on his hands." But Savalas sang at the 1974 Oscars after becoming a household name thanks to Kojak. In 1973, Savalas was offered the role of Detective Kojak in a TV movie called The Marcus Nelson Murders, based on the true crime story of 2 young women murdered in New York City. Marlon Brando was originally considered for the role, and the thought of it upsets to stomachimo. No Brando, no. Savalas agreed to take the role if Kojak was turned into a proud Greek. According to the National Herald, changing the original name Kojovic to Theophilos Kojakopoulos, Kojak to the Americanes. I'm trying to get that strange J in there, Kojakopoulos. The movie was a smash, earning Emmy Awards for writing and direction and a nomination for Best Actor for Savalas. It became the pilot for a TV phenomenon. Savalas' rendition of an honest, tough New York City detective became a template for detective shows that followed in the 80s and 90s. In a crowded field of primetime crime dramas, Kojak was consistently in the top 10. His New York Times obituary pointed out, Mr. Savalas provided many of the flourishes that made the character so memorable, end quote, including the natty suits and vests, the pork pie hats, which I love, the lollipops, oh, and Who Loves You, Baby? According to IMDb, the origin of the lollipop was a suggestion for a cigarette substitute by a fellow actor in a 1973 Italian horror movie when Savalas was trying to quit smoking. The movie was called Lisa and the Devil. Guess who played the devil? And spoiler, Savalas did not quit smoking. His charm, tough exterior, and devotion to justice as Kojak, solving murders on the gritty streets of New York, kept viewers glued to their screens. Herbie Pilato, in his 2016 book on male TV icons, writes, Mike Connors of Mannix and Telly Savalas came to define the ultra-cool older brothers not only of all TV detectives and policemen, but seemingly every male TV character in general. But, in my opinion, none of them ever matched his level of cool. British television critic Clive James in Visions Before Midnight wrote, Telly Savalas can make bad slang sound like good slang, and good slang sound like lyric poetry. The show was originally filmed in New York, but against Savalas' wishes, was later moved to LA with atmosphere shots from New York edited in. Kojak tackled social issues like racism, drug addiction, domestic abuse, child abandonment. Shipman called it required viewing in Britain every Saturday evening for 5 years. It was the same in the US, and probably a lot of other places. Savalas was loved by the public, his castmates, the directors, and it showed. He was having a ball. He told the LA Times, "How could it get any better? I'm just a guy from New York playing a guy from New York." Savalas' younger brother George was driving a taxi for a living when Telly brought him in onto the Marcus Nelson murders with a bit partisan newspaper reporter, and later as a regular on Kojak, playing teddy bear detective Stavros. Kevin Dobson was young Detective Crocker, and there were black detectives, Jewish detectives, Puerto Rican detectives, and an occasional Asian detective to show America the streets of New York City weren't policed by white men alone. And on rare occasions, 1970s, a female detective popped up. The sexism is pretty dated, or at least it was until fairly recently. A fun anecdote about the making of Kojak. Well, filming was still in New York City. The shoot was outside on a cold day, but in the scene, Kojak wasn't wearing a coat. While he was waiting for the shoot, Savalas grabbed the one thing available, a lady's mink coat. Cool as always. Savalas threw the coat around his shoulders, with a pork pie hat and his sunglasses, no doubt sucking on a lollipop all the while. I love it. I love the image. Savalas was nominated for an Emmy 2 years in a row for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series, and won in 1974. He was nominated Best Actor by the Golden Globes every year from 1975 to 1978, winning in 75 and 76. Kojak was seen in 70 countries. In 1999, TV Guide ranked Kojak number 18 on its 50 greatest TV characters of all time. His influence was so strong, he even inspired a lollipop brand in Romania. Although it's a Hungarian company making them now, I think. Somewhere I read a Hungarian teenagers in the early 2000s came across Kojak reruns for the first time and was surprised a TV show had been named after a lollipop. Savalas was wildly popular, and in interview after interview, his charm and nonchalance ruled the day. Star and Sports described Savalas' trailer on the Universal lot where Kojak was filmed. Although technically a dressing room, it is a natural extension of Savalas' personality. A perpetual open house, the local candy store where the guys hang out without having to buy anything, the family living room on a Sunday afternoon where neighbors come to have a cup of coffee while they visit. Savalas answered the continuously ringing phone, "Me, Kojak." The writer claimed there were more people than chairs. But Telly, he said, was king of the mountain, a cool breeze in the hot desert sun that can't be bothered by all that is going on around him. No doubt accurate. Savalas once said, the big houses the family occasionally lived in when he was a child were more like hotels, with uncles and cousins moving in and out, a typical Greek family back in the day. It was typical in my day. The house was always available for family and friends, and so was Savalas's trailer. Wendy Elliott Hyland, in her 1975 book, How to Make It in Hollywood, calls Savalas unusual to look at. Eh? Savalas's response is perfect. Well, your choice of words is unfortunate. My mother would have said classic. She says I've been beautiful for 3,000 years, if you look at the statues on Mount Olympus. Telly, my mother said, your kind of chiseled head has been beautiful since the dawn of civilization. I have no reason to argue with my mother. In the same interview, asked about playing the tough, hard-nosed detective, after years of playing tough, grizzled villains, he said, they should have given me a girl in the beginning and said, Telly is pretty. Let him be pretty with the opposite sex. I was born to be romantic. Listen, I was in middle school when Kojak came out. Middle school. The girls thought Telly Savalas was hot. The high school girls thought Savalas was hot, and so did their mothers. He couldn't understand why this lady didn't get it, and neither can I. Savalas made the most of what he knew was fleeting fame, speaking out against the junta in Greece, the military dictatorship that crippled his parents' homeland. The dictators, apparently, were fans of Kojak. That must have stung. He bought himself a Rolls Royce with personalized plates. Telly S. In 1975, he went in on a racehorse with a friend. He named the horse Telly's Pop because his father took him to his first horse race at Belmont. Nice play on words. Savalas owned a ranch house in Rancho Mirage, California, and a 4-bedroom apartment in London near the casinos. But he also brought electricity to his father's village back in Greece. He performed in Las Vegas with dancing girls, singing away. There's a clip on YouTube of him dancing with his baby brother Teddy on stage. He was riding high. He proposed to Sally Sheridan, the mother of his son, but she didn't want to be another Mrs. Savalas, and they split up. In 1976, Telly Savalas became involved in a famous lawsuit while on hiatus from Kojak. He was co-starring in a German-English movie called Inside Out. According to the New York Times, the Daily Mail called him a bit player unable to cope with fame. They smeared our man Telly, claiming he partied all night and forgot his lines on set, that his private excesses were negatively affecting his very professional co-star, James Mason. Savalas sued, and James Mason testified in his behalf. The Times reported, the newspaper's publisher did not try to justify the article and apologized to Mr. Savalas in court. And there was astonishment in the courtroom at the unexpectedly high amount awarded to Savalas, £34,000. I imagine he went right off to the casinos. When Telly Savalas came back home that year, he appeared on stage in my home state of New Jersey at one of the top entertainment venues on the East Coast, the Latin Casino in Cherry Hill, a 2,000-seat venue for dinner and a show showcasing top performers. The Courier-Post reported, not a Greek diner was open for 25 miles around. New Jersey, Greek diner capital of the world. Savalas was presented with a plaque and a bust of himself by AHEPA, the American Hellenic Educational Progressive Association, originally formed in response to attacks on the community by the KKK. The organization promotes ancient Hellenic ideals of education, philanthropy, civic responsibility, family, and individual excellence. The importance of Savalas's universal appeal after decades upon decades of Greeks being the unwanted, the unclean, the inferior, according to the American eugenics movement, was a source of pride to every Greek in the country. He represented Greeks when Greeks were still facing hateful stereotypes. That same year, Savalas was tapped to play professional gambler and famous poker player Nick the Greek Dandalos. It would have been perfect casting. Savalas loved to gamble. He won poker tournaments in Vegas. He played baccarat, billiards. Unfortunately, the movie was never made. But we have an anecdote his friend shared with the LA Times about Savalas' gambling, which he did take very seriously. He was playing blackjack in Las Vegas when an elderly woman approached him looking for an autograph. He stopped to sign her autograph and lost a chunk of change in the process. Money, easy come, easy go. He loved people and always respected his fans. In 1977, while Kojak was still going strong, Savalas took up residence at the Sheraton Universal Hotel in Universal City, Los Angeles. It was a convenient drive to the studio. There, he met travel agent Julie Hovland, vacationing with her mother and aunt, and invited them for a drink. He was 55. She was 20. I am seeing a pattern here. My mother would have crowned him. My aunt, well, he's a Greek. He has a lot of money. They married. His mother came to visit the couple at the Sheraton and never left, so Telly put her up in her own suite of rooms a few floors above theirs. Kojak was canceled in 1978. I loved that show. We rewatched all 5 seasons last year before we permanently canceled Amazon Prime, and season 5 was different. Like the producers or writers were trying to jazz up a classic. It didn't work, and it ended. Movie offers dried up, except for the occasional cameo. Savalas was offered roles in TV shows, but they didn't work out. When a friend said it was sad it was all over, Telly's response was, hey, it's somebody else's turn. Savalas and Julie had a son and a daughter. In 1983, he earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The next year, he actually quit cigarettes after chain smoking for 40 years. The lollipops hadn't worked, but something did. I gotta say, as someone who has never liked cigarettes, even as I grew up surrounded by them, Greeks, Savalas always made smoking look cool. He made lighting a cigarette look cool. He lost his younger brother, George Demosthenes Savalas, to leukemia in 1985. That same year, Savalas starred in a TV movie, Kojak the Belarus File, which was well received, and that must have been bittersweet without George there to play Detective Stavros. He considered other potential series, including one in which he'd play a lawyer, but nothing panned out. So in 1989, when ABC decided to bring back Kojak, he agreed. It would be on a rotating basis with 3 other cop shows in a movie of the week format. But Savalas was tired, and it showed. He was sick. After only 4 episodes, the new Kojak was dropped. Savalas suspected he had bladder cancer, the same cancer that had taken his father, but he didn't want to go to a doctor to confirm it. Gus, his brother, whose own cancer had been successfully treated, urged him to go. Meanwhile, his mother, Christina, passed away. In 1991, John Tesh asked Savalas if he had any fear of dying. No one knew about his illness at that time except for family, so maybe it was a question for a man approaching 70. Savalas said no. He wanted to live long enough to raise his little ones, who were 7 and 4. I'm thoroughly convinced I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking around. By the time he finally consulted doctors, his cancer had spread. He resisted the surgery they suggested, which had crippled his father almost 40 years earlier. But after finally agreeing to it, he remained stable for a couple of years, with checkups every 3 or 4 months. Bladder cancer is one of the most common cancers. A leading risk factor is smoking. His acting career petered down, so he did other things. A tourist business in Universal City has a page about Telly's longtime home, the Sheraton Universal Hotel. They say around this time, Telly liked to lounge around the hotel lobby in his slippers, greeting star-struck guests who approached him. It sounds like something Savalas would do. According to this page, Savalas found out the bar in the lobby was struggling, and he offered to help them out by hanging around the bar and bringing in some of the memorabilia he had from his Kojak days. He had no financial stake in the bar, but spent so much time there the bar was renamed Telly's and is still called Telly's to this day. His health faltered in December 1993. His daughter Christina said he was only very ill for about 6 weeks before he died. Some of his friends weren't even aware he was dying until the very end. He left Pasadena Hospital to go home to the Sheraton and was surrounded by family and friends when he died, including his wife, all of his exes, and his children. He passed on January 22nd, 1994, the day after his 72nd birthday. There were too many stories to contain in one episode. There were so many TV interviews that were so entertaining. It was a joy listening to him tell these stories. But suffice it to say, Telly Savalas loved his family and he loved people. He loved watching them, interacting with them, imitating them. He did not fret about the ups and downs of his private life or his career. He told Bill Boggs that money is meant to be utilized and spent. Commercial success is not going to blow me out of proportion. It's a bubble that's going to burst. I'll go back doing what I did before and tell everybody I used to be a movie star. He was larger than life, on screen and off, and he enjoyed every minute of it. Who loves you, Telly? Everybody. Thanks for listening. Greek Like Me is a Stealth Greek production. This episode was researched, written, and narrated by me, Pamela Liotis Wood. Our producer, photographer, and post-production editor is Douglas John. Visit our website at stealthgreek.com for resources, photos, links, and more. Please rate, like, and subscribe because it helps us keep making content about Greeks and Greek culture. Greek Like Me is on YouTube, Facebook, or on Instagram at Greek_like_me. See you next time. Yassas.